More than ever, there's concern about the reliability of our energy supplies and our power grid. So, are you ready to live when the grid goes down? Hey Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene. And congratulations, this is Newbie Prep Step number 10. And it's all about living when the power goes out, when the grid goes down. And so you've followed us all along this way, and through every step, we've really focused on each of these areas. So now we're gonna kind of bring it all home.
So let's talk about 10 steps that's gonna get us there. Let's start with number 1, lighting. The ability to light your world is very important. It's psychologically important, and for safety reasons, it's very important.
Okay, and you bring up a really good point, because back a long time ago, we turned off our power in January to see if we could survive, and light was huge for me. I got really depressed because everything was dark, and we didn't have anything really cool like this at that time. My plan was to use candles, but you can see the difference in the amount of light that something like these hybrid solar lights put out versus these candles. Now, the other thing we want to talk about is reliability, right? So this is a really cool camping light that we got.
It is.
It requires batteries. So when I go to need light real quick, I have to go find batteries and put in this because
I take them out because I don't want them to leak in there and ruin it. So it's,
yeah.
I mean, it's a great tool, just has its limitations.
It does have its limitations, which means that it stays in a cupboard and doesn't get used all the time. Now, the other thing, flame sources can be really dangerous. You need to make sure you have enough oxygen. But the other thing, I have a whole collection of these beautiful lamps that I had bought thinking they're emergency preparedness, and they're beautiful in my decor. Well, our son Ben has this thing about earthquakes, and he, especially when he was little, he saw these sitting up on top my cabinets where I thought they were beautiful, and they were full of fuel. And he's just like, in an earthquake, Mom, this is gonna be so bad. And so these have all been emptied and they're put away. And I'm not getting rid of them because I think they're beautiful, but they're not as functional. Could we use them? Absolutely. Be careful when people are selling things in the name of emergency preparedness. John kind of alluded to this. You want your life to be as normal as possible. So whatever you're going to use in an emergency, you want to be using in your everyday life. That's why I use the hybrid lights all the time. Now, don't get me wrong. I totally use candles for but it's not for lighting, it's more for atmosphere and for the smell. Some of them smell really good. But so like something like these emergency candles, they're sold for an emergency, but you've got to think about how really effective they're going to be during an emergency. Another thing that we bought, you can see this is little Christy, she labeled her own. Back when she was little, we bought one of these for each of our kids for Christmas one year. And honestly, they have never worked right? It was a cool thought, but they were cheap and they didn't work right. So make sure whatever you use to light your world, you use it on a regular basis and that it really works. That if, like my hybrid lights, if the power goes out, I'm good for a year or so, right? And there's different kinds of lighting you need. Oh, this is so obnoxious. Yeah, that's what I see all the time. So John, he uses this all the time when he goes out at night and stuff to take care of the animals. But he comes back in and he's got it right there, just blinds me. But so you need task lighting. And something like this is great for area lighting so that you could sit around and have dinner together as a family, or, you know, play cards or whatever. And then you need specific task lighting, which I absolutely love this flashlight for. The other thing about these hybrid lights is that they will recharge your cell phone. They have a USB and a quick charge port, or what do you call the other port?
The micro USB for charging the unit itself.
The micro USB.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so that's that. You know, if you go to Hybrid Light and use the promo code Provident, they give you 20% off. That's another reason why I like them. But look at solar alternatives because I think they're really good.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with any of these things.
Yeah, there
well, yeah, you need to buy something that's quality, but but make sure you're getting something that works for you. For example, we wouldn't want a whole bunch of candles burning around our house with the grandkids here, even sometimes with wives here. But find the tools that work best for you. Get what's going to do the job the best for you, and then make sure you have it ready to go. And that includes things like, if you're going to use candles or whatever, these lighters, the standard lighters, or these new piezoelectric, which I really love. These are pretty amazing. But whatever you're going to do, let's make sure we've got it. Let's now talk about number 2, which is heating and cooling. The ability to stay warm or cool, stay at a safe temperature for your health and, if possible, your comfort.
Now, John and I are very different when it comes to healthy temperatures. John is very resilient and studly, and he can go really hot temperatures and really cold temperatures, and he'll be just fine. I have MS, and so my range of healthy temperatures is much smaller. There's a much smaller window, because if I get too hot, my body kind of short circuits. And if I get too cold, it kind of does the same thing. So we have to be more careful and cognizant because of me. So think about the people in your family that you need to take care of and what their needs are. So we've got posts out there, right? And videos about keeping cool during the summer.
And we've also got some out there about staying warm in the winter. So your job is to find the tools, find the means that are going to allow you to get that job done.
Now, so show them some of these fans. We're not like advocating any of these fans. There's some really cool solar fans in the cooling video, but this one is operated off a battery, and
yeah, it's got a built-in USB battery, so it can be charged by any little solar panel or whatever. It charges that, and it'll run for quite a long time. This is another one. This is a camping fan, similar. It's got its own solar panel with battery. It's got lights. So find what it is that's going to work best for you. You can, if you've got a power station, you can run a bigger fan. If you have the ability to put in a wood stove, wonderful, but many can't. So tools like the Vesta.
Let's talk about the Vesta. I love this. Okay, so what you can't see is that there are cans in here of Safe Heat. Oops, let me light this one. These are 6-hour cans of canned heat that are safe to burn indoors. They're used by caterers. Now, they slide in here, and then you want to talk to him about the fan?
Yeah, this has a Peltier fan on it, which means you don't need any batteries or power sources. The heat drives that, and the difference in the temperatures creates a voltage that runs the fan. So it's really a cool little toy.
No, it's not. It's nice and warm.
And I don't know if it's really a toy, but it's kind of fun, and it gets the job done.
You can cook on it too, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the thing that I really like about this, do you see how it's safe? I mean, this is hot. This will be hot to the touch, but I can put it here on my table. I'm not emitting any bad stuff, which is really good. So I really like that. Now, when we talk about backup heating, fuel storage is huge. You want to make sure that you store your fuel safely. We've also got posts and videos on that. So go back and review that, and don't do anything that's going to make the problem worse.
Number 3, the ability to cook your food.
Both indoors and outdoors. And when we say this, people will say things like, oh, well, I got it all set up for outdoor cooking and it'll be just fine. But I remember when we turned off our power, and the last thing that I wanted to do was to go out and cook food in January outside. And sometimes the weather, the wind, or whatever just won't allow you to do that. So we want to make sure we can cook safely indoors and outdoors. We have a whole video on indoor cooking. And then we have posts and videos on some of the outdoor ideas. So that's really important that you can do both. This is just the Vesta we just talked about, and you can use 1 can or 2 cans or 3 cans of canned heat in it, which is really nice because it gives you the option of having a much larger pot. But I've noticed that with 1 can of canned heat, I can't actually bring something to a full rolling boil. I can make it simmer, but with 2 cans, I can bring it to a full rolling boil. And so that's one of the really nice things about being able to do this. And there's all kinds of different things that you can do indoors. Well, actually that's not true. You're kind of limited. Alcohol, cooking with alcohol or canned heat, a wood burning stove. things like that you could definitely do indoors, but you never ever want to burn a fuel inside that can produce carbon monoxide. So don't bring your Camp Chef inside the house. You know, your Coleman stove, any of those, it could be really bad and produce carbon monoxide and make everybody sick. So don't go there. Number 4 is communication. And all I really need is my cell phone.
Well,
right?
That would be nice if that was reality, but it may not be your reality. You may not have the ability to use that. So what are we going to do? First of all, we have to think about one-way communication, which is our ability to receive information, whether that's through shortwave, whether that's AM, FM, however we can get that. That's one means that we need to look at. The other is two-way communication, our ability to communicate with others, mostly those that we love or that we need to work with in a crisis situation. And we have chosen to use amateur radio and GMRS, but there are other platforms out there. So, and we've got some good information we'll share with you in the links. Check it out, decide what's going to work for you, and then you need the ability to power that. Whether it is your cell phone, if your cell phone's working, but you need the ability to charge that.
Got to be charged.
These hybrid lights do a great job with that because they do have a charging port, power stations. However that needs to happen, you need to be able to power this equipment.
The most important thing when it comes to communication, though, is practicing. If you have chosen to use GMRS or amateur radio, with amateur radio you need to get the license, right? But you've got to practice and decide on the channels and the privacy codes. Even with your cell phone, you need all of the contacts. So make sure that you've practiced this and are ready to go when something happens. Definitely check out a recent video that we did on communication, and I'll leave a link for it.
Let's move on to number 5, which is water. We all understand how important water is, and your first and best source should be water that you have stored in your home because you know the quality of that. You may at some point have to go out and find water, and then you'll need to be able to treat that water.
So we have water stored in a variety of different ways. We've got giant tanks, and we've got a rainwater catchment system, but we also have just small bottles that are really easy to just pick up and use right away. Now, some of the water that was stored in some of the barrels might be a little bit suspect. And so we want to make sure that we can filter that water before we consume it. Now remember, with water, the best way to treat against biological creatures in the water is just to boil it. Because if you reach 212 degrees, you've killed any living creatures that might be in it that can make you sick. That won't remove things like chemicals that are in your water, but boiling is definitely the best. And we've got an entire video on different ways to disinfect your water. But the same thing comes for filtering. In fact, we've got a whole video on how to select a filter, because not every filter is best, right? And there's not one filter that I can say would meet all of your needs. And so you've got to figure that out. But like, this is the one, this is a Sport Berkey, and this is a great water filter. And that's what I have in my to-go kit, right? And each one of these filters serves a different function. So just make sure that you've got water covered in case it can't be delivered to your home.
And check out the resources that we'll put in the description. Number 6 is food.
And I am all about the food. So during a power outage, a short-term power outage isn't quite as bad. But what I would do for short-term power outages are things that are really easy to pick up and eat, that you can eat directly out of the can, that don't require cooking or require minimal cooking. This is actually freeze-dried chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. Don't judge me. That would be great for when the power goes out. So that would be a short-term event. But if the power stays out for a longer period of time and it's a widespread power outage, like what would be caused from an EMP, we're going to have some issues with getting food from the stores, because they'll have the same power outage issues, but the supply could be in danger too. So that's where your long-term food storage comes in, your dried goods. And don't get me wrong, because some of these things will last 5 to 7 years on the shelf. But it's really important to have a long-term food supply so that you've just got that security that you know you have food to eat and you won't starve regardless of what happens. And then the other thing that we would highly recommend is a garden. Grow some of your own food, whatever you can, whether you're planting a fruit tree or some type of berry bushes or you're growing a vegetable garden, anything that you can produce on your own property is going to be very beneficial nutritionally and also help you be more self-reliant. Make sure that you do your homework with the food storage. We have videos and posts. One is on how to develop a short-term food supply, a 3-month supply of everything that you normally eat. The other is on how to develop a long-term food supply that is good for you and your family, because it's not the same for everyone and you need to tailor it directly to the nutritional needs of your family. Once again, I'm very different. I have to eat a really clean diet, except when I'm cheating with chocolate chip cookie dough. I eat a really clean diet where other people might not. You could have somebody that's diabetic that can't have some of the things that other people can. So make sure you tailor it to your family and your needs. Number 7 is security. A short-term power outage isn't going to provide the same risk that a long-term power outage might, but think about if you have a security system at home. Most of those only have a battery backup for 24 hours or less, and so some of your security systems might not be working, so definitely think about that. But in addition to that, we need to secure our home and make it more difficult for somebody to penetrate it. So do you have really good locks on your doors? Do you need security doors or security windows? Do you have valuables that are in plain sight that might be enticing people to come to your home? So we really need to make sure that our home is secured. But then in addition to that, we need to be able to protect ourselves. This is one of my fun toys.
Yeah, and this is a very individual kind of thing. We won't go into a lot of detail because there's a wide range of perspectives on this, and you need to do what's right for you, whether it's things like pepper spray and stun guns, or please don't. Or, whatever that may be for you. You decide how you are going to protect yourself and your family. Maybe it's martial arts. We have our children all engaged in martial arts, and us to a smaller extent, but decide what it is for you. And
so let's talk about firearms for a second. We don't talk about that much on our show at all. But that's because there are so many other people who are covering it. Make sure that if you choose to have firearms in your home, that you do have them secured. You need to make sure that you have the correct ammunition for what you have, and you need to practice. You really need to get comfortable with whatever your weapon of choice is, so that it doesn't actually become a weapon in your enemy's hand.
Number 8 is sanitation. And if you've watched any of our videos, I think you know that sanitation is a huge deal. The grid dropping, our local sanitation facilities will have some backup fuel, but if they don't have that replenished in a reasonable amount of time, we're going to have failures of our sanitation systems that we rely on, and we kind of are spoiled. But this creates some serious problems.
For instance, our personal sewer system where we live has a 3-day backup of diesel. So for 3 days, for a 3-day power outage, we're okay. After that, you start having issues. And so Jim Phillips' videos, they were great. Go look at them. We've also have a post where we spell it all out and different ways to dispose of human waste and take care of your trash and things like that. In fact, one of the things that we did just recently was we installed a fire pit in our backyard. We just concreted in this little fire pit. And the reason we did that was because we want to be able to have that normalcy that John talked about. Whenever anything bad happens, we just want that infrastructure in place that we're using every day so that it doesn't feel like something out of the norm. There isn't that big learning curve. And that fire pit would be an okay place to dispose of burnables, safe burnables, during a longer term power outage. One of the other things that Jim Phillips had talked about was the need to dispose of the human waste, and we really like to use our own toilet because, let's face it, everybody would rather sit on their own personal toilet than any place else when they're doing their business. And we bought these just recently so that we could, because urine isn't bad, right? Urine would be totally safe to go and put in your yard. So you could put this just slides. If you're used to the hospital, you know these are in the hospital all the time, but you just put this in, put the toilet seat down, you can urinate, and then you could dilute that a little bit. And you could dilute it with like water you've saved from your shower or things like that, and then put it in your yard, and that's just fine. So there's lots of things like that that we need to talk about. So Short-term power outage, sanitation isn't such a big deal. Long-term, it's a super big deal. Make sure that you have all the supplies that you need. Stock up on soaps and toothpaste and disinfectants, things like that, so that you've got what you need so that you can handle whatever event happens.
And check out the resources we'll put in the description. Number 9 is backup power, your ability to run critical loads in an emergency. So your first step is you need to decide what are your critical loads. You have to decide, is it medical equipment?
Washing machine.
Washing machine was on my wife's list, so I've made sure that we can meet that need. But what are your critical loads? Decide what they are. You're not going to be able to run your whole house, so don't try and just think that you'll run everything. You have to be very, very selective. So you can find other ways to light your world. You can find other ways
to charge, like USB devices.
Sure.
Because this has a solar panel on it, so it'll recharge, and then you just plug in your little solar devices.
Right.
Not solar devices, USB devices.
Right. And you can find other ways to cook your food. So think about what it is that's really critical and then figure out a way to meet that need. Now that might be with a fuel-based generator. If you have that, make sure that you have fuel for it and the ability to maintain that. You can look at things like power stations with solar panels. These get charged with household power when it's available and then with solar power when it's not. So, but these are not magic boxes that just run everything. These have specific limitations on each one. You need to understand what you need and your ability to get that done.
So I have a backup battery for my computer and my internet and things like that because I work from home. And so that is specifically designed only for that, but that's really useful. So, and for me, in a short-term power outage, that's actually one of my critical loads because I have to keep functioning even when the power goes out. We've got posts on this, but we've created a couple really unique videos where John goes through with me and he explains everything to me in a way that I can understand. And we show like how to power different devices, what it will, what it won't do. Another critical load might be your freezer, because that's a lot of very valuable food. And so if you have a backup battery that is large enough to power your freezer and solar panels to recharge it, and you live in a climate where the solar panels would actually do that, Utah is great for solar power.
So figure out your loads and then how you can run them.
And number 10 is the critical tools and supplies that you will need to stay safe during an extended power outage.
And this is something that's a little more general because this covers a lot of areas, but you need to take and make a list of those things that you use on a daily basis or that you could need. Things like first aid, medications, basic tools, safety, smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, making sure that they are in working order, that you have backup batteries if you need them. What else, Mama?
So, and things like this. So I have this beautiful thing of rope that I bought that John's like, do we really need this? I'm like, no, we do. Okay, because if you are living for a year during a grid down situation, suddenly life changes a lot, right? And we've got our clothesline and things, but rope could come in really handy. Extra work gloves, make sure that we always have a stock of that. Okay, if I'm gonna be cooking outside over a fire or on my wood burning stove or whatever, I need to make sure that I have the right cookware to be able to do that. And it's different for every single situation. One of the things that John has is he's got some lumber stored so that we could board up windows, or if we have an earthquake and some of our windows break, we have the ability to board those up temporarily until we're able to replace those windows. So you kind of got to think through your own situation and come up with the tools that make sense to you. Me, it's a lot of garden tools, because if we have
some chocolate.
Yes, but don't tell anybody, because I'm not sharing my chocolate. I will share all the lima beans that I have with you, but I'm not sharing my chocolate.
So back to gardening.
Okay, so I've got not just one shovel, because what happens if that shovel breaks? I've got enough so that we could really continue to garden and to farm on our little homestead here, even if I couldn't get new supplies for a year or more. So think about that, and kind of with that mindset, yeah, this isn't important in a 2-day power outage. It's just not. But man, it can be really important if the grid down event lasts for a long time.
There you have it. This is the culmination of our Prep Step program, and congratulations for all the progress you've made.
I am so proud of you. If you go through, like, preparing for a grid down event means that if you've conquered this, you are ready for just about anything that could happen. And I know there's some outliers and we never can be sure, but man, this is a great foundation. So congratulations. But now what I challenge you to do is first your homework. So you're gonna go through and you're gonna go into the description of this video and you're gonna read all of those posts or watch all of those videos so that you can really get a better handle, because this video was only an overview. And then I'm gonna challenge you to turn off your power and see how you can survive.
And maybe this is just a few circuits, or maybe you want to try them all. Maybe you want to try it for a few hours or work up to a week. Whatever that is, we dare you, double dog dare you to take the challenge, to figure this out, to make progress.
And if that's too much for you, how about doing something like just using alternative cooking for 1 day a week for a while so that you can perfect that skill, right? Somehow do something so that you're gonna do better than you were last week. We're just gonna make some progress. We did a challenge where we only cooked using alternative methods for a month, and I learned a lot. It was a huge challenge and a huge learning event. So we dare you. And then for the question of the day, comment below. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? How are you gonna practice somehow, whether it's with communications or something else? Comment below and share with us.
And thanks for being part of the solution.